On this episode of Lead That Thing, I talk to Lee Chambers, founder of Essentialise Workplace Wellbeing. Welcome back, everyone. Today, my guest is Lee Chambers. Lee is an environmental psychologist, well-being consultant, and the founder of Essentialise Workplace Wellbeing. He delivers multidisciplinary workshops focused on improving performance and productivity through increasing employee well-being. This is an issue very close to his heart, as after losing the ability to walk in 2014 due to chronic illness, he's battled back to achieve a positive health outcome and is now on the pathway to become medication-free. He also presents the Health and Wellbeing Show on Ribble FM radio and speaks in educational establishments about his varied career path, health challenges, and having a resilient mindset. Welcome to the show, Lee.
It's a pleasure to be with you today, Aruna.
Tell us about what topic you are bringing the audience today and how did you learn about it?
So the topic I'm bringing to the audience today all surrounds resilience. And how did I learn about it? Well, to be honest, I learned about it before I even really appreciated the word, through my own life challenges and the adversity that I faced and how I managed to bounce back from those challenges and really grow as a human being through some times of suffering and some times of turbulence.
Wow, that sounds pretty deep. So obviously when something is personal and it strikes up a change in you, it really makes you want to do something about it, and it makes you want to help people. So tell us how, in your personal story, how did you recognize a need to educate people, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, if we revisit some of the moments of challenge that I've had in my life, it shows then the awareness of how that's then ignited the work that I do today. So I grew up in a blue-collar family in the north of England, and I had a stable childhood. We weren't particularly wealthy, but we always had food and shelter, and all our basic needs were always met. And I was curious as a child and quite disruptive, and my parents realised quite early on that I was academically talented. And got good grades at school without putting much effort in. And that led me to become the first person in my extended family to go to university, which was a precedent and was very much championed by my parents, wanting me to go and set an example for anyone else in the family who wanted to go down an educational path. And I went off to university and enjoyed the freedom and the autonomy. But right in the middle of my studies, I started to struggle quite a bit with my mental health, and a lot of it was down to being a young man who was struggling to explore his emotions, struggling to express his authenticity, and really struggling to be emotionally intelligent and develop into an adult from that adolescent who was, very relaxed. And really I started to look out to society for people to model from. I didn't really see anyone like myself who was diverse, who was a bit of a mix of a person. I'm probably part philosopher, part entrepreneur, part scientist, all mixed together in a suit. And there wasn't really anyone. And I looked back on my own childhood and realised I hadn't had those deep conversations that had kind of generated the skills and tools for me to explore myself. As a young male, you didn't really have people to speak to around your mental health and around your well-being. And this was 15 years ago. The awareness wasn't there. It was much less signposting, and it was still quite a taboo topic. The word mental health still conjured up images of mental illness more than the ability for people to actually communicate and conversate. So that actually led to me isolating myself in my university dorm for 2 weeks. And then my parents came with security and broke in and took me home.
Wow.
And through that experience, I then spent 6 months at home, really starting to reflect and try to work out why it had happened, what challenges I faced, and trying to build myself back up. And what I realised is I'd started to avoid a lot of things. Avoiding socialising, avoiding my friends, avoiding my feelings, avoiding university, avoiding the work I was doing to fund my course. And on that reflection, I realised that I wasn't failing as a human being. It was just a scenario. But in the future, to be able to bounce back effectively, I had to approach the challenge and start to move into the discomfort to really find who I was and be able to find a way to express that. And that's the kind of first taste of building resilience that I got, because I went through that challenge and came out the other side in quite a difficult place, but actually started to look and think, okay, so I'm probably as low as I can be, but I want to now start climbing that mountain in front of me.
Yeah.
And how can I bounce back? So for me, showing that resilience and building myself back up, I went back to university and graduated. And for me, that felt like, something that had at one point overtaken me and left me struggling. I managed to go back and get an outcome that was positive.
Right.
And that then led to me getting a graduate job, which was a really big deal again, as I managed to get a job in a national bank here in the UK, which was very competitive. And I wanted to work in that financial sector, helping people with the financial well-being, while getting to work with the patterns, data, statistic, and algorithms that I also, reflecting, really enjoy as one of my skill sets. But this was 2007 when I graduated, and unfortunately, 6 months in, I then found myself being made redundant and losing my training budget. So once again, I had to show resilience and think, okay, so I've been made redundant. There's no jobs in the industry to go back into. So I'm going to have to take ownership and accountability and go and do something else in the meantime, but really start to figure out what you can do. What can you do now?
Right.
And I ended up going and working in local government and starting a business. And through that, I managed to have 5 years of my life where, in societal terms, I was very successful. The business became, a success financially. And I worked a number of different jobs, still trying to find that purpose. And then in 2014, my health failed overnight, really. And in a week, I was left unable to walk, unable to move, as my immune system attacked my connective tissues in my joints. And again, it took me 11 months to walk again. But through those significant health challenges, I had time to reflect and realize that I had to do everything I could and be proactive. And yeah, I didn't feel great at first. I was in shock. And I had some negative emotions, but I tried to express those as helpfully as I could. I managed to bounce back. And after that year, all that challenge, I was back walking again. And at that point, I was like, I need to help people, because adversity doesn't discriminate.
Right.
It affects us all. And I wanted to find a way. And that really became the catalyst for Essentialise, where I help people through, significant health challenges, but also to become more purposeful and find ways to bounce back when they face harder, challenging, difficult times in their lives.
This is so good, and there's so many points that I want to touch on here. So the first one that I caught was basically like teen mental health, and that is such an important topic. It's so hard to understand this, because sometimes with teens you think, oh, they're just a teen, they're being a teen, they'll get over it. But it's so important. Like if anybody's out there and has a teen, and you see what, like Lee had described, I noted as basically disengagement, avoidance, and all those are signs that something is wrong in the sense that something needs attention. So definitely don't overlook those signs. See how your kid can get help. And it's so good your parents were there to help you through that. And like you said, I think in the 15 years that has passed, that has gotten better, because now there are life coaches that specifically try to help teens get through this. And it's really good, because now it's a problem that is recognized. And then I would say that it seems like that was your first maybe turning point, because you've seen yourself overcome this. And I like the fact that you said that you realized that you were not a failure, because I think a lot of people, teens and including adults, it's that I don't feel good enough, or I don't feel like I feel like everybody is better than me. But it's just this, it's this mental block, really, that you feel like you're not achieving, but it's not really true. But being able to acknowledge that, I feel like that's the first step to kind of say, like, yes, I can climb any mountain, I can climb any mountain that comes my way. And I think that sort of set the foundation for you, like with the layoff, because you're like, hey, look, Lee has overcome like mental health. Lee can do this, because you feel stronger and you know you can do it. And same with your walking loss, obviously that's huge. But because you've built that mindset to say that, look, it's going to be okay, and there is life after this, and I'm going to do it because I'm strong, it makes such a huge difference. And I think that's an amazing story, Lee.
Yeah.
And I want to hear more. Obviously, you've lived it, you've experienced it, and you're in a great position to understand what other people have gone through. So tell us about story in terms of how your experience has helped somebody else kind of be in a position now to scale a mountain in front of them.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of highlight a few of those points from that journey that really still resonate with me today, and especially help other people. It was when I lost the ability to walk, at first I struggled, but then I realized, firstly, the previous adversity that I'd been through had prepared me for this, prepared me for the challenge. And also, I actually became grateful because I realized that I might have lost my health at that period, but I still had so much to be grateful for. And at that point, I had my son and my wife was pregnant. So I had responsibility for others, which is so powerful in taking that accountability for recovery. And now I've had a number of clients who really, they've come to me in times of adversity. I've had a number of clients who come in redundancy during COVID, and naturally they are looking for someone who can who has that lived experience and has been there, but also is able to ask them questions and make them feel almost a little bit uncomfortable in a time where they're feeling a bit uncertain. But it's then you start to help them really become more self-aware, because so many people have amazing gifts and strengths inside of them.
Right.
And you can become a little bit of a blind spot to just how amazing you are as an individual. And sometimes it just takes someone who's willing to ask a few questions and shine a light on some of the interesting things inside. And really, it's taking them on a process, and it's a little bit like self-discovery, because many of us live in this busy cycle where we never really stop to reflect. And helping people to actually have that moment and look back and really align with their values and start to dig in a little bit more to what makes them feel purposeful every day, because that builds resilience against the challenges that we will face. If you feel that you're living a life that resonates with the person you are and the person that you want to become. I also help a few people with chronic health conditions. Again, it's very relatable, and I take them through that process. And I've had a lady who she struggled to leave the house because of a chronic health condition, and it had eroded her confidence. It had left the feeling that the pain was bigger than her. And we had a number of sessions in the comfort of her own home, where she was able to express herself more authentically. And it was a process that was ultimately tailored to her. She wanted to literally take small steps. But we took small steps, and over a number of months, she started to leave that comfort zone, and actually started to really, without me pushing her, started to empower herself and encourage herself to just do more. And all of a sudden, she was going out more when we were in lockdown than she was before we were locked down, because she started to anchor into the fact that you were allowed outside the house a few times during lockdown. So I should be incredibly grateful for that.
Right.
She found access to nature very close to her house. And now she goes there almost every day. And that was from someone who, you know, when I met her, I think
Yeah.
she left the house twice in a month.
Wow, that's amazing. I love the fact that, and this is something I can totally relate to, because I've in my life, I've been at a point too where I think definitely I was at a very low point, and I totally relate to your journey, because there were a lot of the same steps that I took to kind of get to the point of that resilience. But to highlight it, it is like there's so much power in that, what you call self discovery, and I call it like self reflection, you know. And I love the fact that you addressed, you know, people struggle with imposter syndrome, and I talk about it all the time. This is exactly what you're saying, is that people don't see that strength in them, and it's just having that conversation and highlighting it, and then for them to kind of hear it from the outside, and to kind of slowly realize that, okay, yeah, I guess I did that, I didn't really realize that. And you start to build up that, you know, belief, and then say that, yes, I can do it. And like you said, this lady that you helped get back on her feet, starting to feel that confidence and feel empowered. And you know, it's a process, but it starts with really, you know, believing in yourself and having someone like you be that coach and help them get there. And that's amazing. I think that's an amazing story. So if there was a word of advice, we've been talking about resilience, but if there was a word of advice you would have for people, aspiring leaders or current leaders, what would that be?
So a massive part of leadership for me, and obviously I've led myself and led organizations, is that resilience is much easier to come by when you lead and understand yourself. So having that emotional intelligence and self-awareness as a leader allows you to be present with the people that you lead. It allows you to be credible in their eyes. But really what it comes down to is to lead is to serve others.
Mm,
And if you can lead with love, loving the work that you do, loving the people that you do it with, and loving the journey of leading and the responsibility that you have to grow and help other people lead themselves, that is incredibly fulfilling, and it gives you such a resilient barrier. In fact, what it does sometimes is it makes you so resilient, you actually become anti-fragile. So what
mm,
happens is you are so passionate about what you do and love the people that you do it with that when challenge comes, you do it more. You
yeah.
love it more because you embrace the challenge as a chance to grow, as a chance to show
Mm,
more of yourself and bring more out of others, because we all have an amazing skill set for challenge, and
mm-hmm.
everyone can do different things in challenge, come together and collaborate as leaders. And it's amazing how as human beings we can adapt, acclimatize and innovate in a crisis.
That is just so amazing, and I love that. That's a great piece of advice, and I love the quote you started off with: "To lead is to serve others." And I love how you built up on like just leading with love, and how it's so fulfilling, and how it makes you stronger, and it reinforces the belief in yourself as a leader. Amazing. So you have more goodies for our audience in terms of a book that you have coming out. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've got a book coming out in April 2021 called How to Conquer Anything, and it interweaves my own journey, a lot of the lessons I've learned along the way, with a lot of practical psychological advice that I've taken from both practice and learnings over the years, about how we can start to look at conquering many of the things that hold us back, such as imposter syndrome, depression, looking at anxiety, digital addiction, and the biggest chapter is about conquering fear.
Mm,
Because to have a fine balance between fear that is generated and is a signal, and the courage to sometimes step into those fears it's an amazing skill. And if we can kind of balance that and understand that you can't be too courageous and have no fear, because then you'll take risks beyond what are reasonable and sensible, but having a really nice balance between fear and courage, we can actually conquer some of those more irrational fears that are simply holding us back from stepping into growth.
Those are extremely relevant and important topics, and I wish you all the luck with the book. I can't wait for it to come out. I definitely think that's a book that we should all read. I'm certainly going to pick one of those up, so definitely let me know when it comes out. I know a few people that could use it, and certainly I would want to read it from someone who's lived such an amazing journey to this point. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lee. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to be with you, Aruna.
Lead That Thing is a production of Optim LLC, helping businesses define strategies for growth, strategize, energize, optimize. Join me next week on Lead That Thing to hear about how people are going out there to make a difference in their lives and for others. Until then, lead that thing.